Forever is the strangest thing. It's shorter than you think. No think.
The Holy Trinity, Bermuda, Alaskan, and Bridgewater Triangles. Some say even notable deaths. The significance of three is undeniable. You are to bear witness to yet another event. We're invited to join your hosts, Krista, Aaron, and Brandy, as they guide you down the rabbit holes of the paranormal and unexplained, striving for answers of this world and beyond. Welcome to Blondes, Booze, and the Woo.
Hey everybody, how are you guys doing? I'm pretty excited about this show. I'm not going to lie. What about you, Brandy?
I know. I've been excited all day. Had some problems with the dang weather, of course. It started last night. I was without power for like 2 hours, and when it was minus
like
22.
Yeah,
it was a negative 22 outside, and if we would have, went any longer, we would have had a serious issue. It took me all day to warm the house back up. It was bad.
I told you to head north. You come up to my house anytime.
I know. Well, I finally got to take a shower. It was warm enough in the house to take a shower. I said, I'm gonna have to take a shower here pretty quick.
Right. I hear you. Want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. We appreciate you guys all being here. Jamie, hello. Susan Woodcarver, hello. Gary, Daryl Denton, Susie B, Crystal, Jennifer, BMR, hey BMR, Chiro Sounds, hello. Midwest Night Watchers. Gosh, there's a lot of you guys on here. Donnie Chubb.
I know.
Pat Murphy.
They must be excited too, like I am.
Yeah. Jean. Hello, Jean. Letitia. Let's see here. I'm trying to go through everybody here. Barton. Hello. Good evening. And I think I'm getting to them all here. Okay. All right. I want to start out by saying this is a Blondes and Booze and the Woo show tonight. So we're pretty excited about that. I always look forward to these Friday night shows with the Woo. It's all just turns it up a little bit,
Yeah.
I want to remind everybody on Monday evenings, these times I'm going to tell you are all Central Standard Time. The Monday evenings tune in to Texas Front Porch at 6:30 p.m.
With me.
With Randy and Tex. Yep.
Me and Tex.
Yep. And it's a good show. I watch faithfully. So on Tuesday evenings is the Van Buren Variety at 7 p.m. At 8 p.m. is Beyond. What's that?
I just said, hi, Bob. Oh. I'm sorry. I'm interrupting you. Go ahead.
On Tuesday evenings is Beyond BMR at 8 p.m. Wednesday is Ciru Papers at 8 p.m. And then right after is Jason McLean Questions Everything. Thursday is Brunch with Bigfoot Michigan Rob at noon. Thursday evenings is Blondes and Booze at 8 p.m. And Friday evenings is Blondes and Booze and the Woo right here, 8 p.m.
Like right here.
So if you guys would go and subscribe to all of those good shows, and I guarantee you they're worth watching. I've watched every one of them, so you won't be disappointed.
I'm sorry, I'm just a little chatty. I'm so excited about this show.
Well, on that note, let's just bring up our guest. We have Mr. Steve Stockton.
Hey there. Good to see you. Glad to be here. I've been excited all day too, so I love what you all are doing here. So happy to be a small part of it.
Well, we definitely appreciate you being here. It's a big honor. I've been a fan of yours for a long time.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
A long time. Your shows.
Exactly.
Even my 10-year-old, she watches all the weird shows with me, and she's into your show. She sits there and watches them.
I've got people that tell me their animals listen to me.
Yeah,
Missing persons and mysteries. So
yeah. And she always asks me, she says, do you think that person was ever found? I'm like, I don't know if they were.
Sadly, a lot of them aren't, or they're what's left of them's found. It's some of the cases are sad, but our mission statement basically, if we can bring one person home or give one family closure, then we're doing what we're called to do. So,
right. How did you get started doing that?
Well, Bill Melder was the one that started the channel several years ago, and I have another channel, 13 Past Midnight. That's my playground over there where I get into my woo and paranormal. And I had done a series on disappearances in the Great Smokies. I'm from the area, and Dennis Martin disappearance in 1969. That was just one of the keystones of my childhood. That was kind of a loss of innocence there. That was the first time I realized that, yes, a kid can go missing and not be found. We were about the same age, lived in the same town. And just in my little 6-year-old mind, I went out on the country road where we lived and looked for him on my Schwinn Stingray. I'm thinking, well, we only live an hour from the Smokies, but that was an hour by car. So, but that one just always stuck with me. I'd narrated a story about that, and Bill heard it and left me a message like, hey, would you like to come over here, come see what I'm doing, come narrate for me? And I would get that occasionally. I'd go and it would be like, a small channel or something I just wasn't into. But at that time, he had like 8,000 subscribers. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot. And joined forces with him, and it just kind of took off. I posted a thing on Facebook where on this day, yesterday, 2 years ago, we had 60,000 subscribers. And this at the end of this month, probably around the first of the year, we'll pass 250,000. So
wow.
It resonates with people. We're doing something right. And that's just the subscribers. We get about 2 million views a month. And that's like a double platinum album every month. And that kind of scares me when I realize that many people are listening to me talk. But that's the one thing I'm good at. I can talk. So
I'm right with you. And so is Brandy.
and my dad always told me, like, find something that you love to do, find a way to get paid to do it, and you'll never work a day in your life. So I love what I do. I'm thankful for all the listeners and subscribers. I keep seeing a shadow behind you, Krista. Is that a shadow person, or is there somebody in front of your light?
No, it's Santa Claus.
Actually, I got people down here wrapping presents.
Oh, okay.
That's what I said. It's Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you said it was Friday. I forgot. I didn't. I lose all track of time. I work full time from home as a YouTuber and an author. I'm lucky if I can tell daylight from dark. And with the time change and stuff, I'll think it's like midnight and it's not even 8 o'clock yet. So
yeah. Yep.
It's 7 o'clock. I'm out here in Mountain Time. I'm in the high desert of New Mexico.
Yeah, for sure. Wow.
That
Daryl Denton, he's a great guy. That's one of my favorite people right there.
Yeah,
hi, Daryl.
It's one of our favorites too.
Mm-hmm. He was on the show with us last night.
Yeah, and we had Jeremiah Fountain on last night.
So
that was a good
we
show.
had a good talk.
We did. That was a good time. Real good time.
Well, let's get on to my favorite subject.
Well, wait a second. I want. I'm not quite done yet. So
y'all scared me here. I'm wishing I had a better show for you now.
No.
The excitement is palpable.
You're good. I got one of our I guess cohorts, BMR. He's writing for you, and then our good friend Barton Nunley also wrote for you.
He and I are working on some stuff over on my Bandcamp page, spoken word and audiobooks over there, bandcamp.stevestockton.com. Just stuff that I want to do that doesn't fit anywhere else, and a lot of good stuff over there. So I'm all over the place. I have to keep busy.
Yeah, well, you have two good people writing for you, because I know them both personally, and
Barton, oh my God, Inhumanoids, that's one of my favorite books ever. So glad to see him here in the chat.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got some cojones. He hunts Bigfoot with a sword and a spear. He's not playing around.
No, he's not either.
That's why we love him.
Yep. Now we can
Exactly.
get on to your favorite subject, Brandy.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to talk about black-eyed kids. Now, there's not a whole lot out there. You've got your basic folklore type stories, things like this, but you have no proof. I mean, you have a few eyewitnesses, but it's always intrigued me. And also my daughter, she actually got me to, turn to it when she's like, Mom, you should look this stuff up and check this out. And I said, okay, I would, And then when Krista told me about you, I said, oh my goodness, we have got to have him on. We have got to talk about this.
And I told her, I said, I already asked them.
Yeah,
It's one
it's
step
a
ahead of
frightening
me.
encounter, but be forewarned. A lot of times when I tell it on a show, stuff will happen either during the show or afterwards. I was on Where'd the Road Go with Soraya Ascath. He lost control of his whole recording console. I was on there with, I think Cisco Murdoch was on with me that night. We just kept talking, and finally we're like, Soraya, are you there? He just let it run because it was still recording, but he couldn't do anything with it. So, and I've had the first time I ever told it was on Art Bell's show. Art wasn't there that night, but Heather Wade, his producer, was filled in for him. And she and I are friends apart from all this. And she kind of goaded me into telling it. It's one of those I'll never write it. And I was hesitant to even talk about it for a long time. I'm part Cherokee, and a lot of the older people will caution you to be careful what you talk about or what you even think about, because you can draw stuff to you unwittingly. And people have asked me, would you ever like to see him again? And it's a strong no, but then there's still a part of me that, like, yeah, I would, because I think I'd be more prepared this time. Right. But I told it on his show. Like I said, he was sick that night, but he called in during one of the mini breaks to tell Heather what a good job she was doing. And he told me, that was a great story, Steve, about the black-eyed kids. So I got to talk to Art Bell on Art Bell's show, but Art wasn't there that night. So almost that close.
You're good to talk about it now?
Oh, yeah, I talk about it all the time now. It's like after I made that video about it, things still happen. But, yeah, the first time I told it, later that night after I was off the show, sounded like somebody was out on my front porch and started screaming, came through the house, through the parlor, through the pantry area, into the kitchen, out the back porch, and gone. And my daughter was living with me at the time. I was in inner southeast Portland. And I jumped out of bed, went running there, flung her door open. I thought she was having some kind of emergency or something. She was sound asleep. And I'm like, you didn't hear that scream? And she's like, no, but I told you, don't talk about those damn black-eyed kids. But I've had pictures fall off the wall. Somebody told me they were listening to it one time, and they had a glass bowl of wax fruit on their coffee table that shattered into a million pieces. So just beware. Anybody listening or anybody here on the show, I'm not responsible. My mother, black-eyed kids.
Don't hold you responsible. There's, really, like Brandy said, I mean, you can read a little bit about it on the internet, but there's not really a whole lot. And to actually meet someone that actually
I didn't even really know that much about it. I mean, I'd had the experience. I'd heard a little bit about it maybe, but I didn't realize later on what a thing it was. But I'm a magnet for stuff like that. I've seen shadow people. I've lived in haunted houses, black-eyed kids. I saw some sort of glimmer being, but mine wasn't in the woods. It was in downtown Portland at a bus stop close to midnight. Wow. And I think it's me. I really think it's me. And I've had empaths and people tell me that it's you and your energy, because every house I've ever lived in was haunted to a degree. And I thought about that. I thought maybe it is me, because I've had roommates and stuff that didn't experience anything, or if they did, they wouldn't admit it, or were in denial of it. But yeah, so there you go.
Yeah.
Well, it's like Krista puts it really well. She tells everybody it's kind of like you have your light bulb on, whether knowingly or unknowingly, you have your light bulb on. And
person that was an empath or whatever she was, she said you've got to think of yourself as like a candle in the darkness, and these things are like moths that are drawn to that flame.
Yeah.
They can see you. They know that you can hear, see, sometimes interact with them, and there you go. So Is what it is, to quote my girlfriend, Tiger Lily, who's in the chat tonight.
Aw,
Hi, sweetheart.
Hi, Tiger Lily.
She's braving the storm there in Indiana where she's at.
Wow. Yeah, it just
Ooh,
came through
that's
Missouri
cold up
yesterday, and
there.
it was awful. It was awful.
How is it in Missouri where you guys are at? You get snow and cold and all that too?
It's still
Well,
in the negatives here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, we're still
It's
negative,
been
but
cold
I have
here.
heat
We were
now,
in,
so I'm
yeah,
good.
single digits last week, but today it was 48, 49 degrees here. And I'm in
Wow.
northern New Mexico, the high desert, just real close to Colorado border. And I think they got hit up there, down south, and I think eastern New Mexico got it, but dodged a bullet this time.
Yeah, you got lucky. You definitely got lucky.
Yes, you did.
Let's jump in and tell us about the Black Eyed Kids experience you had.
Okay, I'll try to give you the nickel version. The long version's about 20 or 25 minutes. That's on, I think I've got it up over on 13 past midnight.
Mhm.
And my friend Tanya in the UK, she has a channel called Unicorpse Tales, like a unicorn, but a skeletal one. So it's a unicorpse. And she interviewed me. And I know it's up over there. If you want to hear the full
Yep,
thing,
I'm writing it down.
warts
Yeah,
and
I'm writing
all.
it down right now.
But
Yep, got it.
it was back in the 90s, probably about 95 or 96. I was working for, and I go into as much detail as possible because it's almost like a PTSD type thing. When I tell it, I relive it. You'll hear it in my voice, and my palms get sweaty and stuff. That's why I don't ever want to write it. I don't think I could convey the emotion that comes with telling it. I'm not that good of a writer, I don't think. But I was working for a medical management company. We had, I was in IT as network administrator and off-site stuff. We had 35, I think, remote network sites, doctors' offices that we managed. And my job was to keep them up and running and whatnot. While I was moonlighting, there was where our main headquarters was, there was a place right down the road, a comprehensive breast center. And this was just at the time that people were starting to switch over from the dumb terminals to an actual networked PC at every desk. And I knew somebody that worked there. They wanted me to come in and talk to their office manager. And I got the gig setting their network up. So when I finished one job, I'd go down the street to that one and sometimes work till midnight or after, getting their network set up. And it was a sweet contract, $100 an hour. That's good money now, but that was great money back in the mid 90s. So yeah, I was all about it. And I was coming out of there one morning. It was about 2 a.m. I'd worked late that night. I was getting close to finishing the whole job. And I was carrying a spool of Cat 5 cable and some of my networking stuff. At the time, I was driving a little Mazda Miata, and it won't hold a lot. So anytime I packed my stuff in the car and in the trunk, I'd take up the passenger seat, and putting anything in the trunk was like trying to play Tetris because the trunk's not much bigger than the glove box on a lot of cars. The battery's back there, and Miata's a weird beast. But I came out about 2 o'clock. I had codes to the building and keys and everything, so I could work in there after hours. That way, I didn't get in their way and they didn't get in mine. And so I'm coming out, and again, it's an industrial area. There was no neighborhoods or houses or anything nearby. And I notice over at the far end of the parking lot, there's two what appears to be kids sitting on a curb. And I'm just like, okay, that's kind of sketchy, but ain't none of my business. So I'm trying to get my stuff in my car. And every time I look over, at this point, they've stood up. And every time I look over, they were a little closer. I never saw them actually walk. But when I looked over, they were stopped, but they were a little closer each time. And finally, and I could hear one of them chattering. I couldn't tell what was being said at that time. Finally, they got up under a street light that was there in the parking lot. And I could see they were wearing like very plain, very basic clothes, like dark jeans and a lighter colored hoodie. They weren't quite matching, but almost. There was a taller one and a shorter one. If I had to guess, I'd say the taller one was probably kid's age. She would have been like 12 or 13, and the other one would have been like maybe 8, 9, something like that. And when they got up close, I could see they didn't have any eyes. I mean, it was just pitch black. I mean, blacker than black. And I'm like, every hair on my body is standing up now. And I could start to get where I could hear them. And the smaller one, or the younger one, I'm assuming, never spoke. But the older one spoke nonstop. And it was almost like a litany. Oh, he'll give us a ride. He'll let us in his car. She was talking about me to the smaller, whatever it was. It's dark. It's cold. Now, it was dark, but it wasn't cold. It was in the summertime. And again, they're wearing hoodies. I thought that was kind of odd. And just that speech, it was just almost like a recording. He won't leave us here. He'll give us a ride. He'll let us in his car. He's a nice person. He's this, he's that. And
Wow.
I'm thinking, no, I'm not going to give you a ride. First of all, this is a two-seater, and I'm not going to put two people in one seat, especially two small children at 2:00 in the morning in a parking lot. That's just not good business. And I'm getting really sketched out at this point. Finally got everything in there, shut the trunk. And by this point, they're almost up to the car. And I was so disturbed and so out of kilter. I was fumbling. For whatever reason, I'd left the top down, but I'd locked the doors. And I think it had an automatic lock. So I actually hopped over the door into the driver's seat. I'm trying to get my key in. I dropped my key in the floor mat. And by this time, they are, right at the passenger side. And the one's still 90 miles an hour. He'll let us in. He'll give us a ride. He won't leave us out here. It's dark. It's cold. Just over and over. And when I finally got my car started, roared to life, popped the clutch, and instead of backing out of the parking space, I jumped the curb and went down through the lawn of the place, hit the road there, took off toward, at that time I was dating this girl that just lived a few miles away. And when I worked late like that, I would go to her house and spend the night so I could be at my other gig early in the morning. But this time, no, I went the other direction, headed toward my parents' house, which was about 25 miles away. And there's a 4-lane highway there that goes between the town and the airport. And I was doing like 90 and 100 miles an hour down that road. And I had just irrational fear because it had already been rolling off of me or over me in waves. But I kept looking in the seat to make sure they hadn't gotten in the car, or I was checking my rearview mirrors to see if they were running along beside me, or even looked over my shoulder to see if they were hanging on to it had a luggage rack and a spoiler back there. And just crazy thoughts like that. I mean, I was that upset. And I wasn't worried about the cops. I mean, a policeman would have been a welcome interruption at that point, even though I was totally reckless driving if they'd caught me. But I got to my parents' house, and instead of parking in the driveway, I drove all the way around behind the house and parked my car under a tree, went inside, locked the doors. They were long asleep, and checked all the doors, windows, and stayed up until sunrise, peeking out the curtains. I just expected these little girls to show up. I mean, just ridiculous, irrational thoughts like that. And to this day, I can't explain it. And the only time I've ever felt anything other than fear or disdain, it wasn't even fight or flight. It was just pure fight. So somebody else told my story on their channel. And when I heard somebody else tell it, I don't know. It upset me. It brought tears to my eyes because I thought about those poor 2 little girls or whatever was controlling them. And it felt like a demonic energy. It was evil. And I thought, well, maybe it wasn't even 2 little girls. Maybe that's just how it presented itself to me. Because I think there are things out there that can take on any form.
Yep.
And I think of Whitley Strieber and his owls. He kept seeing owls, and then under hypnotic regression, it was gray aliens. So again, it surprised me that it touched me that way. I almost got emotional there a minute ago when I started talking about it. But I thought, those poor little girls. And I just left them out there. But what could I do? I mean, I explained the circumstances, 2-seater car, 2:00 in the morning, 2 children. The bad mojo juju all over the place. So
well, question, Steve. Had you not had a little 2-seater car, Do you think you would have let them in?
I still don't think I would have let them in.
Yeah.
Again, just because two strange children at 2
Sure.
o'clock in the morning hanging out in a parking lot in an industrial area, medical, there's other doctors' offices and specialist buildings and things out there. So there was no rhyme or reason for small kids to be there.
Right.
At 2 in the morning. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was summer. There was no school or anything.
Right.
Yeah, the voice, it was almost like a chant or a litany. The one, it almost sounded recorded. It was just the same thing over and over. And it reminds me of some of the Men in Black experiences that I've heard, where they're dressed oddly, they speak oddly. And I think there's something out there. If you delve back into, there was a book that Jim Brandon wrote in the 70s called The Rebirth of Pan. And he talked about this cosmic trickster that's out there in the universe that sometimes just throws us a curveball. And it was before any of this, but he mentioned things like that, like the MIB and, in modern times you had the Phantom Clowns. I see you got a clown picture back there. Now, I've never encountered any clowns in the woods, phantom or otherwise. But it's almost like there's something that tries to send things out just to see how we'll react or to try to get us to accept them. I mean, the MIB, they dress well and they drive nice cars, but the clothing's out of style. They talk weird, and the cars are, even though they look brand new, they're out of style. The black-eyed kids, everybody loves kids. Let's send kids out there to infiltrate. But these are creepy kids with black eyes, and they talk weird and they dress weird. The Phantom Clowns, everybody loves clowns, but not when they come out of the woods at night and chase you, or I've heard them coming out with hatchets and things. There's something afoot. I think everything is connected in some way.
I do too.
And I've often said, if they ever send out black-eyed bikini models with pizza and metal albums, you'll know what got me, because I let them in. I'm just kidding, Tiger Lily. I'll get in trouble for that one. But
that's fine.
It's like something tries to push our limits, tries to see. And I mean, you can go back to like the vampire legends and things, and also the demonic stuff. If you're a Christian and you believe that way, things like that only have the power that you give it. Vampire, you have to invite it into your home. Ouija board. I've sat in on Ouija board sessions where stuff would beg, let me come through. It's cold here. It's lonely. It's dark. Let me come in. No. And I was on a show called Amber's Paraworld, and she was talking about how there's stuff that you do that you think is benign that actually can be paranormal. Knock on wood, I'm going to do it, but she said, don't do that. You're calling the wood nymphs or the wood fae when you do that. She said, if you have a welcome mat outside your house, get rid of it. You're inviting them in.
I agree. Yep.
She said, somebody in the chat said, well, what if you turn it upside down? And she said, oh, no, then anything underneath can see that and they'll come in. Now, I don't know if they have that in Missouri, but in the South, particularly north in South Carolina, they have a color called haint blue. And people will paint the underside of their porch haint blue. And that's meant to confuse any spirits. They come up onto your porch to enter your house. They see that, they think it's the sky, and they go up and out your porch roof and leave you alone. And my granny, Appalachian granny, she was born, raised in Cades Cove area of the Smokies, most superstitious woman I've ever known by far. And even in the 1970s, she lived in this old Victorian farmhouse on top of a hill. She would put cloves of garlic in the keyholes at night to keep witches from coming through the keyhole. Now, she was a self-proclaimed witch herself, but in Appalachia, witch can be a lot of different things. Somebody can witch your cattle and cause them to go dry. She was, I guess, a good witch. She called herself a gypsy witch, but I don't know where the gypsy part came in. Like I said, she was raised in Cades Cove, but I'm thinking somewhere in the lineage there was somebody from some old country. But today she'd be called a granny witch or a kitchen witch. She used everyday items in what she did, but she read tea leaves, coffee grounds, practiced phrenology, which that's kind of a lost art now, but she could. It's like palm reading, but they feel the bumps on your head and can tell you things. And she made charms and animal entrails. She could read those. So
Wow.
They had their own livestock, and they slaughtered hogs in the fall, and she would pick out one hog that was hers. And when they slaughtered that one, she wanted to poke around inside of it with some kind of little stick she used to carry around for many different things, probably a wand, but and she could predict the next year's growing season because they truck farmed and raised corn and tobacco and things like that too. And my uncles, she had 9 boys and 1 girl, my mom being the only girl. So I didn't get by with much when I was a kid. She knew all the boy tricks.
Yeah.
But all my uncles would swear that my grandmother was at least as accurate as the Old Farmer's Almanac, which that was a staple in Appalachia. It hung on a string on a nail in the kitchen usually. And they would consult that. You planted by the signs. You cut hair by the signs of the moon. If you had to have an operation or surgery or something, you wanted to do it when it was in the feet and not in the head or the heart because you're less likely to have complications. And there was just this multitude of stuff like that that she knew. And she passed away when I was 13, and I wish I'd had at least 13 more years with her to have learned all that, because I was scared of her when I was little. She looked like a witch. She was a little old woman, had arthritis. She was kind of bent over, and her hands are all gnarled up. And I was scared to death of her, but she knew things that she had no way of knowing. And out of all the grandchildren, there was a lot, because out of those 9 boys, every single one of them was married at least once, some of them multiple times. There was a lot of grandkids. I mean, a family reunion, it was a house full.
Yeah.
But I was her favorite. She was at my birth, and my mom had no knowledge. They gave her twilight sleep, which was popular back then, so she was out of it. But according to my grandmother, I was born with a veil over my face. Now, that's a big thing in the South.
Yes, it is.
I'm embarrassed to tell this, but all it is, it's it's the amniotic sac, or the afterbirth. It was over my face, but in her superstitious mind, that was a veil, and that meant I was a special child. I was marked from birth. So she literally took me under her wing and would take me into her sewing room, which it had been a formal dining room in this big old farmhouse at one time. In the rest of the year, her and one of my aunts would cut quilt pieces, and then in the wintertime, they'd sit in that room and piece quilts together all winter. So she would take me in there and tell me this, that, or the other, this, how to avoid bad luck, or how to avoid the evil eye, or get bad luck off of you, or bring good luck to you. And I would have to repeat it back to her. If I could do so satisfactorily, she would give me some sort of little reward, a Hershey bar, or sometime a crisp new dollar bill. 5, 6 years old, that was a big deal. Oh, I got the dollar. You could buy a lot with a dollar back then.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But, quick question, going back to like the kids type thing. I have a friend who lived in the Sally house in Atchison, Kansas, and he's the one that kind of made it notorious. And when he seen the spirit, it came to him as a demonic looking banshee type woman. However, his wife seen it as a child, as a little girl. And in fact, she even bought presents and left gifts for this child. We know now it was not a child. It was absolutely a demonic entity. But, I personally believe that the demonic they will try to get to you any way they can. Who do you trust? Children and the elderly.
There you go. So,
that type of thing. So I wholeheartedly believe the black-eyed kids. Myself, I believe they are demonic.
That was what I felt, and I don't know how accurate my granny was, but I get things sometimes. I feel that gut instinct. I call it my granny senses. Spider-Man had his spider senses. Well, I got granny senses, and when I feel those tingle, I've learned I better pay attention. But my granny senses were on full alert that night, and literally the hair on my arms, the back of my neck was standing up. I had chills. It was just so abnormal, but yet so benign. I mean, it's 2 little girls, and I'm scared to death. I've encountered things in the woods that have chased me that I couldn't see, and apparitions. I saw my first full-body apparition when I was between 5 and 6 years old. So, and here I am afraid of 2 little girls. I mean, I've seen some stuff that I would never, ever want to encounter again. And then here's 2 little girls that I'm the most frightened that I've ever been by far.
Yeah.
It was
Absolutely.
ridiculous. I'm getting all palms sweating now.
Yeah.
But it's like I relive it when I tell it. I can see that night in my head. I can hear the one talking. I didn't never saw them walk, but they were closer every time. That was weird.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's like they didn't want me to see them walk.
Hmm.
So
Just
But
so everybody knows, like if you ever do have an encounter with the black-eyed children, never let them in.
do not let them in.
No,
Don't let them in your house,
never.
in your car. Don't give them anything. Now, that was one of
Exactly.
the things my grandmother talked about. If a stranger or maybe somebody you knew that was up to no good came to your house and asked to borrow something, didn't matter.
Hmm.
A cup of sugar, milk, a sewing needle or something. No, 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 no. Because then when you give that, it gives them something that they can
Yep.
use against you. And
It's
I
an
know
invite.
that's not very neighborly, but
To me, it's an invite, and the demonic
yeah,
period have to be invited in by some way. They're just not going to pick somebody, random. You have to invite them in. So, and that would be a way, like you said, like the welcome mat, like you had said.
yeah, I'd never even considered that. How many of you have a welcome mat?
Right.
Show of hands in the chat here.
Right.
Right,
Exactly. I
exactly.
You
bet they
got a
will
welcome mat, you
tomorrow.
might want to rethink that.
Yeah.
I saw one on Amazon that says "Go away." That's the one I'm going to get.
There
Stay
you go.
out.
Or something like
Stay out.
dogs live here or something. Have you seen those?
Oh,
Now I have a question. In the beginning when they were saying it over and over that you were a nice person and that you were going to let them in the car, um, did you feel at that time that they were using more of the power of suggestion, or were they going even further, trying to use
well,
like a form of hypnotism
I
or
think because it was very repetitive, and it drew me into it because I was like, why is she saying that? And then I was catching it. It was like the same thing. It was almost like a tape loop, but I could see her lips moving. But the shorter one never said anything. The taller one, which I'm assuming was the older one, was talking about me to the smaller one, but she was looking at me. I
Mhm.
mean, with no eyes, but the
Yeah.
eyes, I guess they were looking at me. It was black. I couldn't really tell, but she seemed to be looking right at me and saying, "He'll let us go. He'll let us in. He won't leave us out here." And just over and over and over for probably
Mhm.
7 to 10 minutes or something like that. It seemed like an eternity.
Well,
Yeah.
some people have reported at the time when they're near these children that they'll have, I don't know, nausea or
Mhm.
a severe, case of the dreads or,
Yeah. Well,
things
I
like
got
that. Did you
that
feel that?
dread feeling. I didn't have any nausea. It was more of an adrenaline rush than anything else.
Mhm.
Like I said, I'm trying to just get my stuff in my car and get out of here to the point that
Yeah.
I couldn't get the door unlocked. I had trouble getting the key in the
Mhm.
ignition, getting the car started. I was a nervous wreck. And
Right. So
again,
anxiety is what you were probably
yeah,
feeling at the
high,
time.
high anxiety.
Yeah.
Okay.
And all the way home, and still to this day, I mean, if I think about it hard enough and remember enough about it,
Mhm.
but the whole episode of tearing down the parkway there at 100 miles an hour, no care for concern for my safety. I just wanted to put as much distance between me and them as I could. If I'd known somebody that lived even farther that would have let me come into their house at 2 o'clock in the morning, I would have went there, I think.
Right. Right.
Right.
Just
Well,
wanted to.
there's quite the debate of, are these cryptid? Is this paranormal? What do you think it is should be classified as?
Yes, all the above. I don't know. It's one of those things. There are no easy answer. Charles Fort
Mhm.
wrote, "One measures a circle beginning anywhere." So there you go. I just all that stuff in my research and things that I've experienced, there is some degree of connection there, whether you want to call it string theory or where the all living things are connected. That certain things out there just are able to vibrate at a higher or lower frequency. I
Mhm.
believe sometimes it will, but there's connections between UFOs and Bigfoot and the pyramids. And I gave a really good talk a couple of years ago at the Conspiranormal conference in Nashville. It was during COVID, so I did it remotely. But I linked Bigfoot, the pyramids, UFOs, the Tower of Babel, missing people, um, I don't know, several other things there and drew a connection to all of them. But I think there is an underlying connection. It may not always be that easy to see, but the one thing, and this will draw giggles and stuff. But the one thing I found that kind of puts it in a nice little package with a bow on top is the Fae theory. I've delved into some of those legends of the Fae folk, particularly in the Celtic countries, where it was, and probably still is, almost a religion at one time in the 17 and 1800s. Well, there's accounts of people uh, having experiences with little men who came out of the sky in a horseless buggy. That's a UFO. Or there's a type of Fae that are described as hairy giants. That's a Bigfoot.
Right.
There's other type of the Fae that are small creatures. There's a whole hierarchy there, and there's different types and different names. There's only one, I think, that's even pleasant toward humans, but the rest of them, they're not very nice. They're types of elementals and things. But if you look at it, and like I said, I've talked to people that are hardcore UFO experiencers and abductees, people that have seen and interacted with Bigfoot, and they'll kind of laugh at you when you mention the Fae. But to me, that's the umbrella that all these other things fit nicely under. Now, again, that's just my observation. That and $5 will get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks, but that's what I've observed.
Wow, that's just amazing, though. I mean, I would have never have thought to bring in the Fae. I would have never made that connection.
If you go back and study some of those legends, I'll send you some stuff offline, some stuff
Okay.
to read through that
Yes,
will
please.
just blow your mind. That a lot of this stuff, the same with missing people, a lot of the cases we cover, it'll be in or near a berry field. People have went missing while picking berries. That's where the Fae, that's not only their food, but that's where they have their reveries and their mating rituals is in the berry bushes. So, you're keeping the Fae from getting their groove on, plus you're taking their food, and they don't like that. A lot of people that have gone missing were wearing red at the time. You think that'd be just the opposite. You'd think somebody wearing red would be easy to spot. Dennis Martin had on a red jacket. There was a case in New England somewhere back in I think it's the 40s or 30s. Sometime rather, a college student, a girl went for a hike, was wearing a red coat. She went missing. Well, that's a color that the fairies detest, and they don't like that color. So are they taking people? I don't know. Again, people ask me that about missing, and I can't point to any one thing. I think it's all the above. There's human predators. There's pure misadventure and being ill-prepared, ill-equipped, or overestimating your own abilities when you're going hiking in the woods, particularly, Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, some of those like that. But then there's a supernatural edge to a lot of those disappearances too, where literally somebody just went around a curve in the trail and they're never seen again. There's no trace. The dogs can't pick up the scent. Maybe the footsteps stopped. There was a case we covered recently where they saw the lady's footsteps in the sand. I think it was in the Mojave. The footsteps just stopped and then didn't go back the other way. And I've tried that before, to walk backwards in my own footsteps. You can't do it unless you're really, really skilled and practiced a lot, I think.
Right.
So, what is up with that?
Right.
And the people also think that Bigfoot takes people. Well, that could happen. Ask BMR here about the Albert Osman case. I've covered that one for for Missing Persons Mysteries. We talked about that one, and also on Bandcamp, Rob wrote about that one. But there's one recently where a young girl and an older man went into the woods. He told her he could show her Bigfoot. He knew where Bigfoot was. Well, he claims that a Bigfoot came charging out of the woods, grabbed her, and took off, and she was never seen again. Now, of course, he was suspect number one, but they could never pin anything on him. His story never wavered. And people even said, well, that's all the more reason to look into him, because if he did do something nefarious or evil, what would be a better cover than to just make up some crazy story that nobody could prove?
Right.
But again, people think that there's government involvement, that there's supposedly underground bases. And if you look, there's a map that you can find it on YouTube that shows where the cluster areas are, where missing people cases happen. And if you overlay that with a map of cave and tunnel systems in the U.S., it matches up.
Mm-hmm.
So what's underground? Is it the Tommy knockers? Is it something that lives in those caves that's taking people? Is it aliens that have been allowed by the government to take people in exchange for technology? If you look back to Roswell and when all that happened, look how much technology jumped since the Roswell crash in the 40s up until, say, even the 60s or the 70s, when we have the microprocessor and computers, and just things have gotten better and smarter. And that's one of the theories out there, that we've been able to reverse engineer a lot of this stuff, or that we've traded things for alien technology.
Yeah.
So,
well, I had watched a show where Eisenhower, it was his great granddaughter or something, had went on and said,
yeah, she's got a YouTube channel. She's fascinating lady. She's like a reader or an empath or something like that.
And she swears it's true. Her family talked about it for years, that Eisenhower made a pact with the aliens.
That's one of the theories. And I love those conspiracy theories, because a lot of them turn out to be conspiracy fact. I've heard people say for years that Operation Paperclip, that never happened, that was just made up. That's just a conspiracy theory. Well, as a kid, my dad worked at Oak Ridge National Laboratory as a scientist. And they actually brought some of the Germans out of World War II, some of those scientists that were part of the Third Reich, put them to work right there alongside our scientists. And I went home with a kid from school one time. He had a German name. I won't repeat it. I think he's still around and still alive. He's in law enforcement now. But took me downstairs, and he said, I want to show you something. He goes to the back of the den. That was popular in the 70s. You had a family room or bonus room or rumpus room, what do you want to call it, downstairs. He goes to the back of the wall, the paneling there, and a section starts pushing open. And I thought, okay, it's a bomb shelter. That's Cold War kids will know what I'm talking about, but a lot of people had those shelters in their basement. That's in case of a nuclear attack, and it wouldn't have helped, but it made you feel better anyway. Yeah. So I thought, okay, he's going to show me his bomb shelter. Okay, big deal. He opens it up and he turns on the light, and there was the greatest collection of German war memorabilia that I've ever seen.
Wow.
And I'm just looking around in awe, and I'm like, your dad really takes his military seriously. And he said, no, you don't understand. And he points to a uniform, and he said, see, that was my dad's uniform. And he worked out at the National Laboratory with my dad. So there's one. I've debunked the debunkers. I know 100% that Operation Paperclip did indeed happen. So how many more are like that? Just you got to find the right people with the right encounter experience, and there you go. I love my country, but I don't trust my government in some things.
I'm with you 110%. I believe a lot of that stuff is all government cover-ups, and they don't want us to know much. And that's
the whole Area 51 and all that. When I lived in Nevada, I lived in Las Vegas for about 10 years. Me and some friends, some desert rat buddies, we used to go out there and see how close we could get to Area 51, and then we'd see the camo dudes in the Jeeps coming for us, and they can actually shoot you if you're in a place that you're not supposed to be.
Yeah, that's scary.
But we would get up on Freedom Ridge, and you had a pretty good look down into Area 51. But now they've annexed that and taken that land, so even Freedom Ridge is no longer free. But I've seen some stuff out there. The best UFO encounter I ever had was in Vegas. I was a casino manager, and I'd gotten off work. It was about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was giving one of my employees a ride home, and we had to go out to Henderson, which is south. And we were south of Mandalay Bay, somewhere down there. And I noticed over to the side there was something hovering in the air. I actually pulled over and looked at it. And Chris and Brandy, it was this craft. It was triangular. It had no lights, but it was blotting out the sky. It was darker than the night sky. And once you get outside the city, you can see the Milky Way and stuff out there in the desert.
Right.
It's like that here. One of the international dark parks is right down here at Chaco Canyon. But this thing was blotting out the sky, and it was just hovering. There was a big substation there, electric plant, and it's just hovering over this thing. It was silent. I got out. I looked. My friend that I was giving a ride to, she saw it. She's like, "What is that?" I don't know, but it was as big as a football field, and maybe I'm not a good guesser at altitude or anything, but it was low. It didn't seem too much higher than treetops. And then while we're sitting there watching it, we watched it for maybe a minute or two. It didn't make any noise. There was no movement front to back, side to side. It just suddenly out of sight, silently gone, just out of straight up. Wow. And I have no idea to this day what that was. I hope it was one of ours, but if it is, we've got some super secret stealth technology.
Yeah, that's true.
This was, like big spaceship size, something other. I mean, a lot bigger than an airline or anything that you could fit hundreds of people on it.
I couldn't even imagine.
Well, our Brandy and our friend Terry, who's out in the chat tonight, she had told me about an encounter she had with a spaceship that was kind of similar to the story that you just told. So it's interesting. It's
triangular, jet black, no lights, no noise, totally silent, no movement. I mean, it was like it was suspended in the air, and then, within less than a second, and with no noise. That's my sound effect, but it was just there. Yeah, and then it went up, and it wasn't.
Yeah, that.
I don't even know what to say to that. I'm just like,
I wonder, looking back, if it really went up or if that was just my perception of it, if it cloaked or anything. But for some reason in my mind, I got at least the illusion of upward movement, but I don't think it actually moved. I think it was just there, and we both saw it. And then I think it maybe started up, and it was either gone that quick or it started up and then cloaked. But totally vanished.
I hate to stop you there, but we're almost at 52 minutes, so we've got to take a break and say goodbye to our radio stations here. So we're just going to take a quick bathroom break.
5 minutes, guys.
Too much coffee.
Just a 5-minute break. We will be back, and let's finish this because this is really interesting. I've seen Bill made a comment too about the UFOs in the Piedmont, Missouri area too. So anyway, when we come back, we'll chat more about this. So you guys stay tuned. Give us 5 minutes, and I'm going to play it now. We'll see you in 5.
5.
Four minutes to go, folks. 4 minutes. Three minutes. We're almost there. 2-minute warning, guys. 2-minute warning. One minute. 1 minute.
Hey, everybody.
Hey. I
We
guess
back.
he didn't. Yes.
We back.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about more about this UFO stuff now.
I am too.
You know,
Go ahead.
I said I want to hear about that Piedmont
Yeah.
experience.
Mopar Bill is the one that said that. He said his son lives south of Truman Lake. He has seen some from there at his place.
Wow.
And then Be Kind says, I don't want to ever see a Dogman or Black-Eyed Kid. Although of the two, I think Dogman scares me more. UFOs and Sasquatch, not too scary, more startling. I don't know. What would you rather see, Brandy? A Dogman or Black-Eyed Kids?
Well, the Black-Eyed Kids, I can say no and shut my door.
True.
You know, a Dogman, no.
A Dogman can come in your house.
Exactly. If they want you, you know, that's it. You know, you're not getting anything else.
Right. Exactly.
But, you know, I mean, I sit and I think, and I've seen some strange things, you know, in the sky looking at times. And I'm like, I wonder what that is. I guess I need to really pay more attention, you know.
Yeah.
Terry Mosby, I think, has really got me into, you know.
Yeah. Do you remember when
watching all
Terry
that
told us?
stuff.
Do you remember when Terry told us about her experience? Were you there? I think she told me in person. I don't think it was on one of our shows.
I don't remember. I don't think so. I don't think I was there.
We're gonna have Terry back on again. She talks about
I think so.
UFOs.
She's got a real good story that needs to be heard, you know.
Yeah.
Well,
Jamie
we're glad
says,
to see you back, Steve.
Yeah.
I'm back. My dog can't tell time. You can blame that on Mulder, Miss Mulder. And yes, he's named after the X-Files. He's a Chihuahua Corgi mix, and he's as odd looking as he sounds. And when I first got him, he wasn't too sure about me. And I had some bamboo out back, the place where I was living in Portland. And he would sit out there in the bamboo and peer at me. He's got these little ears. He looked like a fox. Talk Fox Mulder. So he became Mr. Mulder.
That's cool. That's a cool name.
But he can't tell time. He had to go out. Of course, he has to stroll the grounds and patrol a little bit,
yeah.
and then do his business. And then he's ready to come inside.
You got to find the right spot.
Late coming back on him. Yeah, he had to check his P mail and then run it through a smell check after that. So.
Oh yeah, I've got dogs too. Unfortunately, I
But
can't
he's my best friend and
let him
constant
out, so.
companion. I've never had a little dog that he's attached to me. I mean, he's almost neurotic. He follows me everywhere. He
Yeah.
travels with me. He's been to Mount Shasta. He's been to all over the Pacific Northwest. He's been to San Francisco. I was out there speaking at a UFO convention back in the spring. Got a picture of me and him on the Golden Gate Bridge. Tiger Lily, they say woof and meow, and Benton says it with an Italian accent. Benton's his little black cat I got as a birthday present for Halloween. First cat I've ever owned that was mine. My
Wow.
daughter had cats, but when I was growing up, my mom didn't allow no cats. She was afraid of them, and she sure wouldn't have let me have a black cat.
Yeah. I like cats myself. I've dogs and cats, and we recently just lost our cat, but yeah, cats are so easy to take care of. You can throw
Yeah,
them
they're
food, clean their
pretty
litter
much
up, and away.
self-maintaining, but
Yep.
she likes to cuddle with me, and Mulder does too. So there's a little bit of territorial issue there, but she likes to get up on my chest, and he likes to get behind my legs. So as long as I'm between them, I don't have to worry about anything. But they're getting better around it because he'd had a cat before. We actually ended up calling. I'd had the cat. My daughter had the cat first. We called her Scully after we got Mulder.
Oh,
But
that's cool.
he would play with the cat and do the little thing where he'd run up and spin around, stick his butt in her face, and then run away and just antagonize it. She would play for a little while, and then she'd smack him real good and stomp away. But he likes cats. He identifies as a cat. I think he likes cat toys and catnip. He's a little dog, so a lot of dog stuff's too big for him, even the smaller dog stuff. So
right. I
but
hear
he got a box of Chewy cat treats for his Halloween birthday. My birthday's Halloween, and I'm not sure when his was, as he was a rescue. So I made his the same day as mine. We celebrated on Halloween along with me.
Well, good deal. So Brandy and I were talking when you were still out, and which we'd rather see, a black-eyed kids or a dog man. So people commenting what they'd rather see.
That'd be close. I don't know.
Have you ever had an encounter with the dog man?
No, that's one I haven't had that I know of. I've heard some stuff out in the woods that wasn't my idea of what a Bigfoot sounds like. And I used to hike a lot more than I do now.
Mm-hmm.
I spent a lot of times, I've hiked all over the Appalachian Trail. I've never through hiked it, but I've been on it in every state it goes through except Maine. And I've heard some things out there. I've heard the tree knocks and the whoops and the chatter and stuff. But one night I heard something that didn't sound like what I thought the prototypical Sasquatch or Bigfoot sounded like. Looking back, that might have been a dog man. That's only been on my radar in the last few years. But it also might have been a wild boar, but it was grunting and growling and didn't sound like the other, what I believe to be Sasquatch or Bigfoot encounters that I've had.
Yeah.
I've only seen one once, but I've heard them, and I've heard the tree knocks. I had stones thrown at me in Jefferson National Forest. I was on the Appalachian Trail then. I was night hiking, and I was off the trail. I don't like the trails and stuff. That's for tourists to me. No shade on you if you like the trails, but I like to do the Daniel Boone thing and make my own way through the woods, and that's good and bad sometimes. But I didn't even feel them hitting me, but I heard something hitting the ground, and it was these little round river rocks, and I was a long way from a river, but they were coming laterally out of the woods and hit me from several different directions. And the one I picked up was almost hot to the touch, almost like it had been an apport or something like that. I've heard similar stuff about objects that have appeared that are hot to the touch. And I thought, maybe I need to go get out of here. So I picked me another trek and took off. And thinking back, I don't think it was I was either encroaching in some area that they didn't want me in, or they're actually warning me away from something that was dangerous to me. I've heard stories of them being, beneficial, like they're watching out for you. But whatever it was, and for whatever reason, they didn't want me in that area, so I went a different direction.
Gotcha.
And same thing. I've been in the Smokies and have the woods go totally silent. And I've talked to other people that have experienced that. That's one of the most eerie things. I mean, it's like somebody hit the mute button. You can't hear water or traffic or the wind in the trees. It's like you've suddenly gone deaf. And that's always been a a warning sign to me
Mhm.
I better not stick around here. And the strangest experience I ever had like that, I was in the Smokies, and I had an experience like that, and I just kept going on the way I was going. I'd been up to Clingman's Dome and was making my way back down, not on the trail,
Mhm.
and I came across a clearing, and there was like the biggest, most beautiful tree that I've ever seen in there. I believe an oak tree or beech tree or something. It was out of place. There are some red oaks up at that elevation, but not like this. This is like a Disney tree in a little clearing, and the sun was like shining in a shaft down through the
Yeah.
clouds. And I thought, that's weird. So I went over there and I'm looking at this tree, and it would take 3 or 4 people easily, if not more, holding hands, arms outstretched all the way around this tree. And
Yeah.
I'm here and I'm marveling at this tree, and I'm thinking, that the sun's shining down through the canopy there. And I thought, that'd be a good place just to sit down and rest, maybe even take a nap. That's what I
Mhm.
was hearing in my head. And then all of a sudden, it's like I came to my senses. Like, where'd that thought even come from? It's late in the afternoon. If I don't get back out of the woods, I'm going to be out here in the dark. And I wasn't prepared for a night hike that time. But it was like something was almost lulling me, putting these thoughts in my head. Sit down, take a rest. You'll be okay. Take a nap.
Mhm.
And I think that if I had given into that impulse, that I would be one of the people that disappeared and
Yeah.
either didn't come back or would come back and not know where I'd been. Or that's the interesting ones to me, the ones that are found and their perception of time is different. There are
Mhm.
people that have been missing for days, yet when they are found, they either have no memory or they feel like they've only been gone a few minutes.
Yeah.
Or there's
And
been
that's
just the
common.
obverse of that. There was cases we've covered where a person was only missing for a short time, and they're like, "No, that's not possible because I saw the sun rise and set several times, but they'd only been gone a few hours." So
Right.
it's a portal, a glitch in the matrix, a slip into another dimension. I mean, there's
Yeah.
so many different ways you can go with that. It just depends on what you believe and what your own personal take on it is. And a lot of the paranormal's that way. And when I first started in this, literally as a child, when I started on that path, I was looking for answers. But
Mhm.
that's been, over 50 years ago. And now I'm looking for the next set of questions. There are no answers. They're
Right.
not that I've ever found. And that's the fun. It's the look on the hunt for the next questions. What's
Yeah.
this? How'd that happen? And Soraya Ascath that has a show called Where'd the Road Go? I was on there with him one night, and he described the paranormal as trying to put together a puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle, but you don't have the box, so you
Mhm.
can't see what the picture even looks like that you're trying to
Yeah.
put together. And then you find out that some joker has dumped 5 or 6 puzzles, different puzzles, into the box, so some pieces don't fit anywhere.
Right.
So,
That's true.
and that's one of the best analogies of the paranormal that I've ever heard.
Mm-hmm. Our friend Terry commented she's big into the UFOs, and she said that hey Steve, I've heard people say stuff like that after being returned from an alien abduction, about missing time and stuff.
Yeah.
And
Well, and I had one case of missing time when I was a teenager, the only case I've ever had, and that was one of the strangest encounters ever. I was, I think, a junior, maybe a senior in high school. Kid that lived up the street was a grade below me, and we go out and ride bicycles. The subdivision we lived in was being, because I'd moved out of the country at that time, it was being developed in 3 phases. Phase 1 had been there a while. The house that my parents and I lived in was recently built. That was phase 2. Well, there was a phase 3 about a quarter, half a mile on up into the woods, and they had the paved road up there, but that was it. Everything else was just wooded lots that were for sale at that time.
yeah,
And we were riding around up there, just being goofy teenagers. And I remember we were riding along, and I heard a noise up in the woods. It sounded like a metallic, like a clanking noise or something. And I looked up into the woods, and then the next thing I remembered, I'm still on my bike, still moving, but I'm going the opposite direction. My friend's right along beside me. Of course, we'd changed sides, but And we didn't say a word. We just continued on down the paved road. He went into his driveway. I went down a block or so, went into mine. I go in the house. My mom and dad are like, "Where have you been?" I said, "Me and Danny were out riding bikes." And he said, my dad was like, "It's late though. It's a school night. It's after 11 o'clock." And I'm like, "No," because it was like 7 o'clock. When we were up there, 7, 8 o'clock, it was in the fall of the year, so it was getting darker a little earlier. But there was 2 or 3 hours time there that I cannot account for. I have no memory.
Wow.
I heard the noise, and then the next thing I knew, I'm going in the other direction. And we talked about it later, and he was just as blown away as I was, had the same experience. He said, "Man, I thought something happened to me." He said, "I thought I had a mini stroke or something." He said, "But that's why I didn't say anything. I was scared."
Yeah.
And we both had the same experience. He got jumped on by his mom too. "Why are you out so late on a school night? Where have you been?" She'd actually been out yelling for him, and it was close enough that we should have been able to hear her through the woods. But
where do you feel like you were?
I honestly don't know. And I've had people ask me, "Would you like to be hypnotically regressed?" Part of me says yes, and part of me maybe doesn't want to know. If I was probed or taken up a ship or something, I don't want to know about it. I don't want to relive that. That would be worse than the Black-Eyed Kids, I think. And I've often thought about a regression to that to see if I was really seeing what I thought I was seeing, or if that's how it was presenting itself, or if it would make any difference in that situation. But the missing time, that was truly frightening.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine. I personally have never experienced that, nor do I ever want to.
For the not knowing where you were, what you did, what was done to you.
Right.
Now, I never found any implants or any strange scars or bruises or anything, but just the fact that there was 2 or 3 hours there that I simply could not account for, that I had no knowledge of. There's just like the tape in my head was erased or something, because
you don't remember.
Just a total blank.
Right. Why do you think the question on that line? Some people do remember being abducted and being in a spaceship, where some people, like the missing time, they don't remember anything. I wonder why that is.
Well, I think it's the difference in people, and maybe if you want to get metaphysical on it, the frequency you vibrate at, what you're capable of understanding. And I think as a protection mechanism, sometimes the brain will block out traumatic incidents. I've known people that have been in something non-paranormal, like a car accident, and not remember anything about it. Sure. It's like it's just not there.
Right.
And I think there's a mechanism built into us that blocks out traumatic things. Well, something clanking in the woods and take you into the woods, maybe into a craft or up into space, your brain it can't compute that. It can't handle that. So let's just make you forget that. Sorry.
What is let's talk a little bit about the missing persons, because I really, like I said, I'm really into that. And besides your first one that you told us about, what is the one that sticks out to you the most?
Oh, there's so many, and it's mainly the ones where they went missing and no trace. I mean, footsteps disappear, or some of the strangest ones. There was one in I think it's either the Bridgewater Triangle or the Bennington Triangle. There was we did a video about the whole area, and there's Sasquatch sightings there. There was a really good Sasquatch story about a stagecoach that was stuck on a dirt road, and the driver's out there trying to get it unstuck. Well, this big hairy creature comes out of the wood, peers into the stagecoach at these people, frightens them to death. Then it screams and turns the stagecoach over, runs off into the woods. What was that? Well, in that same area, they found a hunter in a boulder field that looked like he'd been crushed to death. Now, there are a lot of people that are found deceased in boulder fields that have gone missing. And a lot of times they will look like they've been dropped from a considerable height when there's no height to be dropped from. How do you explain that? Well, either something crushes them to death, or the Algonquin Indians in New England, they have a legend of a beast that can disguise itself as a boulder. It likes to hide in boulder fields. When an unsuspecting person comes by, it opens up, swallows you, does whatever it does, gets whatever nourishment or whatever it's taking from you, and then spits you back out. Well, if something took you inside of this rock creature and it crushed you or did whatever it did and spit you back out, you might look like you'd fallen from a considerable height. Other people claim that was an abduction. They took them up in a craft and then just pushed them out. So who knows? I mean, there's, again, it boggles the mind. There's so many rational, irrational explanations. You can't put anything in particular, put your finger on anything in particular. It's all the above. So human predators, animal predation. There's people that I fully believe that have been taken by a bear or a big cat. But I've seen pictures, forensic photos of big cat and bear attacks. It's not pretty. The ground cover's disturbed. There's a lot of blood and body fluids and pieces of tissue and things like that, shredded clothing. Sometimes when somebody goes missing and they think a bear or the natural predator ate them, they will go out and look for the bear scat to see if there's evidence in that. But for something to take a person and not leave any evidence behind, no sign of a struggle, no scream. I mean, yeah, some of those big cats can take you suddenly. They like to pounce from above and they go for the neck. They're an apex predator, but for them not to leave any trace of you, and they don't eat everything. I mean, there's people that have disappeared. Nothing was ever found. No boots, no belt buckle, no clothing, stuff that an animal wouldn't eat.
Yeah.
I think if it were that type of predation, there would be something left.
Yeah, I would think so too. We're here in Missouri, and there was recently an Amazon driver attack. They, were saying dogs did it, which is kind of weird. And then, in that same area, there's been, some animal attacks too, so, who knows what some of that stuff is. Cause
I've heard of stories like that where a pack of dogs, and that's just the official explanation. Okay, it was a pack of wild dogs, stray dogs, case closed. But was it really? A lot of that stuff, I think, it was a bear attack. A big cat got him. Again, case closed. Forget about it. Nothing happened here. Move along. Right. And what's really amazing are some of the children's stories where they got lost in the woods, and they say a big bear took them into a cave and cuddled with them and fed them bees. Well, all of us and everybody in the chat knows that's not how bears behave.
No,
they're not going to cuddle with a child and keep him warm and then take him back to the trail. That, to me, sounds like a Sasquatch or something.
Me too.
Kid, if you don't have that frame of reference that it was a big bear, there's even been kids say a big dog, a big hairy dog. And then that's the official explanation. It was a bear. Nothing to see here.
Or the powers that be told that kid it was a bear,
Right.
So
power of suggestion. I've done that to adults unwittingly before. I've convinced people they were sick by just saying, "Are you okay? Do you look? You don't look right," and just being facetious, and then catch them later. Like, I do look kind of strange. As an employee of mine, and she said, "Did you care if I go home tonight?" But when she came in, "Are you okay?" And she, "Oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm great." She was one of those up with people type people. She was a life coach and stuff, and she used to really get on my nerves. So occasionally I would convince her she wasn't feeling well, but she would buy into it, and she would, now that you mention it, I do feel kind of off. Would you care if I went home early? Oh, I'd hate to lose you, but yeah, go ahead. I understand.
I am so going to try that at work.
Get out of here.
I'm going to try that at work.
Well, had another guy that I worked with that had got the lap band surgery, so he was losing a lot of weight. And I put everybody else up to it. I won't call the gentleman's name, but we'll call him Larry. I said, okay, now when Larry comes in this morning, everybody ask him if he's getting shorter. So he comes in, and Larry, I know you've lost a bunch of weight. You're looking good, but did you get shorter? Did when you lost weight, did it? No, no, I'm just the same. Well, two or three other people in different parts of the building asked him that. Well, later in the afternoon, lunchtime, I went in the employee restroom. He's standing there looking in the mirror, and he says, "Do I really look shorter to you?" And we had him convinced that he was getting shorter. He could see it. He's like,
Yeah.
I am. He's like, I remember being taller than you. It's just that power of suggestion.
Yeah, the power of the
And
mind is a
I've
strong thing.
not bragging, but I've got a persuasive voice, and I've convinced people. I mean, I've been telling a joke or shaggy dog story, and had people just buy it hook, line, and sinker up until the punchline, and they're like, "Oh, get out of here! You could tell me anything, and I believe it." So, but I think that works with stuff like that. They if it's a kid, oh, you saw a bear. It was a big dog, big
Right.
friendly dog.
Right.
That can happen, but and then one of my favorites that's one of the strangest is the story of Robot Grandma. Have either of you ever heard that one?
No.
No.
That comes from Mount Shasta, one of my favorite places in the world, that and Joshua Tree in California. I don't know what it is about those places, but they're power spots, and I'm drawn there. And I can remember coming down the I-5 from Oregon and into California, and when you first go around that big curve and can see Shasta off in the distance, it spoke to me. And I've got plans to go back in the summertime. Well, on Mount Shasta, a family had gone camping. They had a little boy with him. He disappeared. They looked for him. They couldn't find him. No trace of him. He wasn't gone for long, just a few hours. But finally, they find him sitting alongside the trail, off the trail on a rock in an area that they'd already searched multiple times. Now, that pops up in these cases. A lot of times a deceased person will be found in an area that's been searched over and over and over. But this little boy was found alive sitting on a rock. And, where have you been? You wandered off. Come here. Well, some weeks later, he's talking to his grandma, and he says, I don't like the other grandma. And she thought he meant his his maternal grandmother. And she said, oh, what's wrong with so-and-so? And he said, no, not that grandma. The grandma that looks like you, but she's a robot. And this kid's like 3, 4 years old, maybe 5. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he said, do you remember when I went into the woods and nobody could find me? And she's like, yeah. He said, well, there was a woman that looked like you and sounded like you, but she was a robot. And she took me into this cave. And he talked about all these things he saw in there, like backpacks and weapons and what appeared to be people in some state of suspended animation. And she was trying to get him to defecate on a piece of paper. And he wouldn't do it. That's weird, Grandma. I ain't doing that. Well, she said, okay, you're not cooperating. I'm going to take you back. And she took him back. And now sit on that rock and wait, and they'll come and find you. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how he discerned that she was a robot, but that's what he was talking about. So she calls her son and says, what have you been letting this kid watch to tell these wild stories like that? And the father was like, he was telling that the other night. We don't know where he got it. He doesn't watch anything like that. He doesn't watch horror movies or science fiction or anything. Well, and then the lady thought back like a year previously. She had gone camping with a friend in the very similar area in Mount Shasta. And one night they heard something in the woods in the dark. She looked outside the tent, and she said the last thing she remembered was seeing red eyes in the woods. Well, she wakes up at some point, daybreak. She's laying on her face in the dirt outside the tent. No idea how she got there. And then later on, she found that she had 2 puncture wounds in the back of the neck. Now, this had happened previously. Did something up there take something out of her and clone this robot thing that looked like the little boy's grandma?
Yeah.
And what was that all? The Shasta's a weird, weird place.
Yeah.
There's tales of caves, of ancient cities. The Lemurians supposedly lived there in and around Shasta. There's supposedly a government base in there. And it watches you. I'd stayed, the last time I was up there, I stayed in a little town, McLeod, which is right down the road from Shasta proper. Mm-hmm. But I stayed in a place called the Shasta View Lodge. And sure enough, they had a little area out back. It was these rustic cabins that were nice inside. but there was a little patio area, and me and my traveling companion were the only ones there, which was kind of spooky. Didn't hardly see anybody in the whole town of McLeod. And we were jokingly saying, well, they're all in it was a Catholic church that looked like a cabin. And I said, they're probably all in the church figured out what they're going to do with the new victims, which are us. But I had this great view of Mount Shasta, and I'd gone out at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I saw flashes of light up on the mountain. I mean, big balls of light that just were here and there in different colors and things, no explanation. It reminded me a lot of the Brown Mountain lights, which I've seen on several occasions, but on a much grander scale. But there was a couple times there where I was out doing something, and I get that feeling when somebody's watching you. I mean, really staring at you. And I'd whip around to try to catch whoever it was, because I was already creeped out being in this Children of the Damned village. And there was nobody anywhere there. And it was the mountain. The mountain was right there behind me. Excuse me. It was like the mountain was watching me. And I don't know, it gets under your skin. I talked to a girl today. She's from the Bay Area of San Francisco and Long Beach, that area. And she felt a call to Mount Shasta. Now, she's kind of nomadic anyway. She likes to live and think outside the box. She dropped everything, went and lived on Mount Shasta in a tent for 5 months because it called her there. And I'm going to be interviewing her for Missing Persons and Mysteries coming up after the holidays. But she says she's got some stuff to tell. I've got a really good friend up there. I don't think he's in the chat here tonight. He goes by Bravehorn, and I can't remember what tribe he's from, but he lives there in McLeod. We met up and exchanged gifts and things. But he's got some really good stories, and he's lived in the shadow of Shasta there for years. And it's just an amazing place. Joshua Tree, same way. That's a power spot. There are places like that seem to pull you. Bill Melder, the other half of Missing Persons and Mysteries, after his mother died, he felt this compulsion to go to Joshua Tree. He went, and his videos on our channel of his story, me narrating his story. He was actually lost in Joshua Tree for 5 days.
Wow.
He encountered shadow beings, but the way he described them, they seemed more like alien grays. They come up to him in the dark and get right in his face. And then when he'd open his eyes, they would skitter away. And he literally thought he was going to die. He said, every day I thought, well, I don't have any food. I don't have any water. This is it. I'm going to dig a hole and just die here. And said that the final time he came to, and a park ranger had found him and was pouring water down his mouth and saying, a lot of people are looking for you, buddy. And in the video there, we even have the news broadcast about him being missing.
Wow.
But he encountered some kind of creatures or beings, or he called them shadow people, but the way he describes them, it sounds more like grays to me.
Yeah.
But what drew him there? What pulled him there?
Exactly.
And Joshua Tree's famous for UFO sightings. A lot of it's like halfway between Vegas and Los Angeles. So a lot of people cut through there going to Vegas. A lot of people just stop and stay. Grant Parsons, basically the inventor of country rock, although he called it something else, that was one of his favorite places to go. And he actually died there in the Joshua Tree Inn. And the body was being returned back to Louisiana, where he was from. Well, his road manager and another guy went and stole the body off the tarmac at LAX in a borrowed hearse, drove the coffin out to Joshua Tree, and set it on fire under Cap Rock, which is still there. And that's what Graham had asked him to do. He and his road manager made a pact. Whichever one of us passes first, give the other a big send-off. He said, for mine, he said, I want you to take me out to Joshua Tree, burn me, and release me into the desert. And that's what the guy did. I've spent the night in the room that Graham passed away in, and it's strange. And there's a couple things that were there the night that he died. One of them's a chair, and one of them's a mirror. And it's strange. I have a thing about mirrors anyway. That was some
I don't like them.
granny stuff, and then you cover the mirror when somebody dies. That's to keep Uncle Ed's spirit from getting caught in the mirror, because you don't necessarily want to be haunted, but even if it was a relative. But anyway, I'd sit there and I'd peer into that mirror and thought, the last time Graham Parsons ever saw his own reflection was in that mirror.
Yeah.
And I didn't see an apparition or anything, but I felt him. His spirit is still there. And even out at Cap Rock, now the Park Service has sandblasted or power washed a lot of that off there, but it used to be black under there where they burned that coffin. I mean, they opened the coffin, a couple of gallons of gas, flicked a match in, and they released Graham's body, his earth suit, into the desert sky. And I think that's beautiful. I mean, that reminds me like a Viking funeral where they would put him in a boat, set it on fire, and shove it out into the water. But that's the way he wanted to be done away with. They did go out there and gather what remains were left, and they sent those to the family to be buried in the family plot. What it was, and he had such a tragic life. If you don't know about Graham Parsons, look him up. He got some beautiful music. He was affiliated with the Rolling Stones for a while, Flying Burrito Brothers, which sounds like a joke band, but they invented country rock before the Eagles or anybody that other people attribute it to. But his father had committed or taken his life on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve when he was a boy. His mom had remarried, and then she passed away, and he was an heir to some fortune. I don't remember what it was, but that was the only reason the family wanted the body back, because it would only be passed from Graham to his stepfather if Graham was put in the family plot. That was in the will, the way it was made out. So they got his ashes, wraps, and whatever they could come up with, and buried it in Louisiana. But there was a time when you could get under Cap Rock and you could still find burned pieces, which I believe to be part of the casket. I don't believe it was part of Graham. I hope not. But I've got a chunk of wood that I pulled out from under Cap Rock before they cleaned all that up.
Wow.
And they're kept. I don't know why they don't just put a plaque and build a memorial to him there.
Yeah.
Instead, the people that own the Joshua Tree Inn have let him do it there right outside the room that he passed away in. There's a memorial to him out there by the swimming pool. Beautiful big guitar-shaped thing. People leave all kinds of trinkets there. The room is full of his posters. People write his lyrics on the walls and stuff. It is a shrine to Graham Parsons. So if you are familiar with him, go to the Joshua Tree Inn. If you're not familiar with him, look him up. I think you'll dig him. But I planned at some point to do a meet and greet out there. Just want to four-wall the whole thing. I think there's only a dozen or so rooms there. Just want to buy it out and let everybody, my fans, get together. And I do that. I have these meet and greets. I had one in Yakima, Washington last year in Hahn Railroad Depot that's now a coffee shop. Jamie, that's here in the chat, she was there, her mom, several other people. We rented one of the banquet rooms, and I live streamed, and we just had a good old time. I gave out books and stickers and hats, and I love meeting my fans and my subscribers. But someday, Joshua Tree, we're going to make it a Missing Persons and Mysteries meet and greet event.
How cool would that be? Brandy, you up for a road trip? Oh, she throws up on me. She's always up for a road trip.
I'm always ready to go.
Brandy was abducted there for a moment.
Yeah. She's kind of having a few internet issues here.
Yeah, well, with all the weather and stuff we've had lately, I'm surprised that it's not worse than what it is.
Yeah, knock on wood. I've been lucky tonight.
Yeah, I keep trying to
knock on wood. You'll call the fairy folk, and they won't be happy. They want to know why you summoned them.
Yeah, I say that all the time.
Yeah,
I do it. Say I'll do it again. I'll just call some more in. I'll have a house full of them by the time I'm done. This house that I live in is haunted.
So what happens at your house that you live in?
Well, I've seen one thing. I've heard two things. But Sandy, my partner, this was her and her husband's house. They moved to Albuquerque for his job, and I bought this house. That's how I ended up moving from Oregon to New Mexico. And there's a little boy, probably about 8 years old. I believe he's Native American. I've only seen the very top of his head, like the crown of his head. There was a while when it was just Sandy and I here. Her husband had already moved to Albuquerque and was getting set up down there. And we were sitting out on the back patio. We'd take our computers out there in warm weather and sit out there and write and plan for videos and stuff that we want to do. And then we travel. I do stuff on location for missing persons histories. And I noticed the bathroom lights going on and off. And a couple times I came in and it wasn't an electrical thing. The switch was physically flipped up, and we were both outside. We were the only ones here. Well, one night I'm sitting out there, and in the kitchen I see what just the very tip top of a kid's head. The curtain doesn't come all the way down to the bottom of the window in the kitchen door. And in the kitchen, I saw just the top of a kid's head go past the window. But Sandy has seen him face to face. She thinks he's Native American, maybe mixed. He's about 8 or 9 years old, just a little kid. No idea what his circumstances in. But in this particular room, this used to be Robbie and Sandy's bedroom. This is Studio B. I've turned this into a YouTube and recording house. I do other stuff too. I do voiceover work, sound design, a little bit of everything. But the living room is my live studio where I stream from, just using the laptop, StreamYard. The center room, that's Studio A. That's where I do my audio only stuff. And I've got a bunch of electronic musical stuff set up in there. And then this is Studio B, where I can do this and then I can record live video back here. But this room just to my left here is a bathroom. It's a nice tile shower, toilet, sink. Well, back in the 80s, there was a woman that lived here that found out she had stage 4 breast cancer, and they had given her a very short time to live. And it was to the point that even chemotherapy or anything like that, they told her basically the benefits wouldn't be worth what you'd have to endure, that it might give you another month or two at the most. But chemo's rough. Anybody that's ever gone through chemo will tell you that. But she decided she was going to go out on her own terms. She went in this bathroom here just behind me and swallowed half a bottle of something. And they found her on the floor a few days later. Man. And she's still here. Now, I've heard her. I haven't seen her. Well, I take that back. I did see what I believe to be her. One morning, I was coming out of Studio A. This was still a bedroom at that time. And I saw what looked like the hem of somebody's bathrobe go into this room. Well, I thought it was Sandy. Well, I'm not going to walk in here. That was her room at the time. So I went on down the hall. I go in the kitchen. She's standing at the sink doing something. Well, she didn't pass me in the hallway. It ain't that big.
Yeah.
But I even asked her, were you just in the bedroom in a bathrobe? And she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I've been standing here for half an hour. Wow. And I even came back in here and looked. There was nothing in the room because I just saw it out of the corner of my eye as I came out of one room and took the turn to go in the other. There was nothing that I could have mistaken for a robe, but it moved. Whatever I saw moved. I came in here. I looked around with her permission. Nothing in here. I looked in the bathroom. But this end of the house always felt dark and creepy. The animals don't like this room because when she lived here, she had 7 cats and a dog. Wow. And then I had Mr. Mulder. So we had a house full of animals at one time. And one day I was sitting in the living room by the fireplace. Every single animal, one at a time, came down the hallway, looked into this room, and then went back. I don't know what that was all about. And I've seen the cats sit down at this end of the hallway watching something up in the ceiling that only they can see. And I came and looked with a flashlight. There's no bug, there's no moth, no spider fly, but the cats saw something.
Yeah. Animals are very sensitive to the paranormal.
Yeah. But one morning, and I am a Christian, I pray every day and often. Well, one morning I was praying before I got up. I was sleeping in Studio A at the time. Just I don't sleep in a bed. Bed hurts my back. I was sleeping in a sleeping bag on the floor. I've done that for years. I'm just camping out in the house. But I was laying there, I was still in my bag, and I was saying my morning prayers, and I heard an older woman's voice just as clearly as I can hear you, probably more so because it was in the house. It wasn't in the room, but it sounded like it was just outside the door in the hallway. And she said, God gave me breast cancer. And that was before I knew what had happened here.
Wow.
I did some research, and I immediately rebuked whatever that was. I'm like, no, God doesn't work that way. God comes to exalt, edify, comfort. Satan is the one that comes to steal, kill, and destroy.
Absolutely.
Haven't heard from her after that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I
It
think,
sounded like
and
she had a lot of resentment there when
yeah,
she
and
passed,
she was mad
you
at God and did what she did. Being careful what I say here because YouTube. But
know?
a friend of mine that can pass people over, Cisco Murdoch, that helps people cross over,
Mhm.
and she likes to do battlefields and things like that, Civil War stuff. But she said, yeah, this woman's angry at God. She's
Mhm.
afraid of what's on the other side.
Yeah.
She blames God, and she's afraid that God's not going to be happy with her or what she did. And my take on that is, she was in pain. She wasn't in her right mind. I
Sure.
think God makes allowances.
Absolutely.
God is love. And
Hmm.
I've heard it explained that if you look at the beach and every single grain of sand on that beach, that's how many good thoughts and thoughts of love God has about you. Now,
Hmm.
because it even talks about that in the Bible that
Yeah.
sometimes stuff that you've done that's contrary to the Word of God, He
Right.
casts that into His sea of forgetfulness.
Hmm.
Just
Yeah.
kind of
That totally makes sense because, I just lost my mom almost 2 weeks ago tomorrow to dementia, and dementia is an awful disease. And my mom was not herself. So I fully believe, that was a sickness that caused that. That wasn't my mom, the things that she
right,
said.
right.
I agree with you with
And
God.
I don't think, and again, I'm not
Yeah.
giving anybody carte blanche to do whatever you want to do.
Right.
I don't think
Right.
it works that way either. If you willingly do it,
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I wish the best for you. But if you're not in your right mind and you're in a great deal of pain and heavily medicated and stuff,
Sure.
who knows?
Yeah.
But again, I like to think that my little, actually, it was more rebuking than a prayer. But I don't think she's here anymore. I don't feel her here. I haven't heard
Wow.
anything, seen anything. And then the other one, I was setting up to record in the living room to do a live show, to broadcast rather than record. And I heard a younger female voice, maybe somebody in their late teens, early 20s,
Mhm.
down the hallway say hello, but it wasn't like a hello, how are you doing? It was like, hello, what's all this junk in the living room? Hello, what's this? And I knew it didn't like Sandy,
Mhm.
but and I knew she was outside. So I knew the door didn't open, but I went over and I opened up the door. She's out there tending to there's a cactus garden and a flower bed and some stuff out in the front.
Mhm.
And I said, did you just come in the house and say hello and then go back out? And again, no, I've been out here the whole time. I don't know what you're talking about. I
Yeah.
don't know who or what that was. But after the cancer thing, I did some research and found out that indeed a person, I believe it was 86 was the year that she passed away. So she's been here apparently that long, but I don't feel her here now. And Cisco's got some people that help her.
Yeah.
Sir Brian Bowden's one of them. There's some other ladies that I won't mention that's what they do. They
Mhm.
cross people into the
Yeah.
light. And I think either what I said or the people, because these people, I mean, they don't have to be here physically.
Right.
They can reach out with their minds and do. I believe in
Mhm.
all that. I've seen
Me
too many
too.
things.
Me too. Mhm.
Excuse me, throat's getting a little dry. But I believe she crossed over to whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I believe we can always help them.
Yeah,
Give them an answer, and maybe just you know, praying and showing her, that she's seen you pray all the time, and showing her that God's
and
not.
that was making her angry. I mean, she lashed out. You're praying to God, but that same God gave me breast cancer. No, He didn't.
Right. 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 Yeah.
And I like to think that helped at least nudge her
Yeah.
in the right direction than these other people that do that sort of thing. I think
Yeah.
they encouraged her on, like, you don't have to stay here.
Right.
Uh,
And it's just a little bit of coaching and maybe talking to them a little bit. I mean, we're all going to go there one day. It's going to be, we're all going to get our turn. And
that's the only time that you're truly ever alone, and that's that's a personal thing. My grandmother that I talked about, I was with her in the room when she passed. That was the first person I was ever in the room with. I felt her spirit leave her body.
Mhm.
I mean, it was a palpable sensation,
Yeah.
and I sensed that. And that was another one of those times where everything went dead silent. It was like
Yeah.
somebody hit the mute button in that room, and
Mhm.
then the volume just, as her spirit, it went up
Yeah.
as the as that passed, slowly heard the sound come back up. Then I could hear people, nurses and doctors walking in the hallway and the stuff over the paging system and stuff. But it was like being in a vacuum for it was short, maybe 2 or 3 seconds, but that was when her spirit left
her body, left her physical body. And the thing too, like I also believe, when someone is in a coma or, right there at the end, and they're unconscious, but I still believe they can hear you too.
Oh yeah. They say the hearing is the last thing to go.
Yeah.
But, and then a lot of times people that are literally on their deathbed, they talk about children, seeing children. My mom, I was in the room with her when she passed away some 30 or so years later. And at one point, and I mean, she was pretty much gone anyway, but at one point she just kind of sat up in the bed and she looked across the room at nothing and said, "No, children, I can't go with you right now." And she was waiting on my brother and his wife to get there. And then my daughter was with me.
Yeah.
But as soon as some people, they can do that. I think they can hang on until a certain condition.
I believe my mom did. My mom, I was raised Catholic. She was big Catholic. And, we had she was on hospice. So they had a preacher come in, and the preacher was there and prayed with us. And she said, do you want me to call the priest? And I thought, you know what? Yeah, let's do that, because that was what my mom was familiar with, and, the anointing and all that stuff. So I was like, yeah, let's do that. So we did that. And priest was there within the hour, and he prayed with us and the whole 9 yards. He did the anointing with her. And then within 20 minutes after he left, she died.
Yeah.
I fully believe she was.
I think people hang on. When my brother passed away, his wife was in the room with him, and she could tell he was just hanging on.
Yeah.
She left the room just for a few minutes, and in that short amount of time, that was when he passed. He was waiting till he was alone. He wanted to go by himself. Now, others, they want somebody there. I think, again, that's a personal thing. Whether you do or you don't want anybody around, he didn't. He didn't want her to be there when he passed, and he literally clung to life till she stepped out of the room just to go to the nurse's station or something. And then by the time she came back, he was gone.
Yeah.
And that was the way my mom, when she went, I mean, it was like that. She just was, and then she wasn't.
Yeah.
And they weren't going to code her or anything anyway. She was terminally ill. And it was, as morbid as it sounds, it was a beautiful passing.
Yeah.
And same with grandmother, just the look that came over their face, just that finally that they relaxed, they were at peace, whatever pain was. Of course, that's your suit. That's just what's left over anyway. The real you is your spirit, your soul, whatever goes on. But it's amazing. Now, I hope I don't offend anybody with my beliefs and things, but again, those are your own. Everybody's path to salvation or spirituality, that's entirely up to you.
Yep, I agree wholeheartedly. We're almost up on the 2-hour mark. Gosh, you know what, Steve? Seriously, we're going to have you back, because I could talk to you all day.
And I can sit and talk all day. Ask my girlfriend.
Seriously, you're going to have to come back and do another show with us.
I like to talk. That's what I do. I'm a raconteur. I'm a storyteller. I can tell you paranormal stories. I mean, true stuff. I don't make stuff up.
Yeah.
I have written some middle grade fiction under a pseudonym, but it's marketed as such. That's a hard market to break. But now my other books, that's all true disappearances, my personal encounters. That one's My Strange World. That's my paranormal encounters.
Yeah.
And then Strange Things in the Woods, the first one, that was my retelling of other people's stories that I collected from friends and family over the years. But
where can people find your books at?
As my publisher likes me to say, on Amazon or wherever fine books are sold. I'm listed in books in print. Any library, any bookstore can get my books for you.
Awesome.
And they're also available on Kindle if you like to read electronically.
Awesome. Good deal. Well, we're going to call it a night, just because I got to get up early morning for me tomorrow. Good old Christmas Eve.
Yeah, I'm doing a live stream tomorrow night over on Missing Persons and Mysteries. There was some confusion as to what time. Right now it's scheduled for 8:30 Mountain, but it may be earlier than that. It was scheduled earlier. Bill Melder, my partner, he wants to be there. He couldn't be there at 7, so I don't know. But there will be a live stream. If you go to the channel, set the notifications for it, you'll know when it goes live. But I'm going to be showing some creepy Christmas videos from 13.
Ooh.
And I'm also going to, I've been asked to do a live reading of 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. So I'm going to indulge my plans there. And I got several requests for that. And I'm going to wear a Santa hat and everything. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. I'll be tuning into that. I think that'll be cool.
Yeah, everybody come over. We're going to have fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I want to tell everybody Merry Christmas. Hope everybody has a good one with your families. Hug your family. Be thankful for your family and everything that you have. You know, there's always somebody out there worse. And honestly, my belief is Jesus is the reason for the season. So,
well, and something you might be interested in, Susan Woodcarver, it's here in the chat. She's one of my writers for 13 Past Midnight. She just sent me a script the other day. The Virgin Mary, protected by angels or aliens. It'll give you a whole different take on the Christmas story. That's on 13 Past Midnight. Go check it out. And as she likes to say, be kind to everyone you meet. Everybody is fighting some sort of battle or a hard battle. Absolutely. You never know what anybody's going through. Be good to one another. That's I say be good to yourselves and each other. That's how one of the ways I sign off on my channel. Yeah, I wish everybody Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate. Celebrate the best one you can have. And for me, I'll see you a little farther on down the trail. Tell your animals I said hi. Krista, Brandy, thank you so much for having me on here.
I hope you come back.
I'm excited about this all day. I'll be on anytime you want me to be here.
We appreciate it. You're awesome.
Yes,
you're awesome.
Absolutely.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Tiger Lily.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody in the chat.